You know what separates the people who dream from the people who do? It's hunger, not the kind that hits your stomach, the kind that hits your soul, the kind that wakes you up before the alarm and keeps you up when everyone else has quit. The hunger that whispers, then screams that there's more inside you than the world has ever seen. Most people don't fail because they don't have talent. They don't fail because they don't have time or resources or connections. They fail because they're starving for the wrong things. Validation, comfort, approval. Instead of feeding the one thing that actually builds a life, the hunger to grow, to create, to rise. And I want you to be radically honest with yourself right now. When was the last time you felt that fire inside you? That raw, unapologetic desire to become something greater. When was the last time you said, this is mine, I'm claiming it, I'm going all in? Not halfway, not when the timing is right. I mean all in, mind, body, heart, and soul. Because here's the truth, hunger doesn't come from outside. It doesn't show up because life gets easier. Hunger is built in the struggle. In the moments you're tested, in the days when nothing seems to work, but you refuse to back down. Hunger is forged in the darkness. That's where the strongest version of you is created. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for clarity. But hunger doesn't wait. Hunger moves. Hunger decides. And the moment you decide that your future is bigger than your fear, your actions start to match your destiny. Your voice changes. Your standards shift. Your entire identity transforms. Let me tell you something. The world responds to the person who is hungry. Opportunities open for people who chase them with intensity. Doors unlock for people who knock with certainty. Life bends for those who demand more from themselves than anyone else ever could. But hunger isn't loud. It's not dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, almost invisible. It's in the choice to get up one more time. It's in the decision to try again after failure. It's in the moment you choose discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, purpose over excuses. And maybe you've forgotten what that hunger feels like. Maybe life beat it out of you a bit. Maybe someone told you to be realistic, to settle, to lower your expectations. But deep down, you know that voice was never yours. The real you. The you that existed before fear, before doubt, before life got heavy. That version of you is still in there, and it's hungry. You don't need permission to rise. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need every step mapped out. What you need is a decision, a real decision, that today is the day you stop feeding your limitations and start feeding your potential. Today is the day you reconnect with the hunger you were born with, because when you're hungry, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop accepting the minimum. You stop waiting for someone to save you. Hunger makes you resourceful. Hunger makes you relentless. Hunger makes you unstoppable. So ask yourself right now, what are you hungry for? Not what looks good to the world. Not what sounds impressive. What sets your soul on fire? What keeps you up at night? What would you chase if you knew you couldn't fail? Because whatever that is, it's calling you. And it's waiting for you to show up with a hunger that will shape your life, your identity, your destiny. Now breathe and remember, you were not created to be average. You were built to rise, to break through, to lead, to build, to become. And it all begins the moment you decide to awaken that hunger inside you and feed it with everything you've got. Hunger is the force that transforms your identity and drives you beyond your limitations. Because hunger is not just an emotion. It is the internal engine that rewires who you believe yourself to be. When a person is hungry enough, they stop operating from the old identity that kept them small and start stepping into a version of themselves that once felt impossible. Hunger makes you confront the beliefs you've held on to for years, the ones that whispered you weren't ready, you weren't capable, you weren't worthy. Hunger pushes you to reject those limitations, not because someone tells you to, but because something inside you begins to rise and refuse to settle for the life you've been tolerating. And when that happens, when your hunger becomes stronger than your fear, everything shifts. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop caring about the opinions that once paralyzed you. You begin to make decisions from a place of purpose rather than protection, from expansion rather than survival. Hunger is what turns desire into discipline. Anyone can want change. Anyone can talk about their dreams. But hunger pushes you to act when the desire fades and the work becomes uncomfortable. It turns the I should into I must. It turns a vague intention into non-negotiable action. And the moment something becomes a must, the identity that couldn't do it begins to dissolve, and a new identity emerges, one that is built through consistency, resilience, and an unshakable commitment to growth. Hunger taps into a deeper part of you, a part that doesn't rely on motivation or external praise. It's the part of you that knows there is more available, more possible, more meant for your life. And that inner knowing becomes fuel. It becomes the fire that gets you up earlier, pushes you harder, and keeps you focused when most people are drifting. Hunger is the antidote to limitation because it refuses to accept the stories that keep you stuck. Every limit you've ever experienced was reinforced by repetition. The same thoughts, the same patterns, the same decisions. But hunger disrupts that repetition. It interrupts the loop. It forces you to challenge the narratives that have controlled you for years. Hunger says, there is more in you. Stop playing small. And the moment you listen to that voice, even for a second, your identity begins to shift. You begin to see yourself as someone capable, someone powerful, someone willing to stretch beyond comfort. Hunger becomes the evidence that you are no longer aligned with the version of yourself who settles for less. The people who transform their lives don't do it because circumstances suddenly became easier. They do it because they became hungry enough to rise above the circumstances. They created internal standards that made excuses irrelevant. They demanded more from themselves than anyone else ever could. And that's the power of hunger. It creates new standards. When you raise your standards, you naturally raise your behavior. When you raise your behavior, you naturally raise your results. And when your results change, your identity shifts to match the new reality you've created. But it all begins with hunger, the spark, the pressure, the desire that refuses to let you stay where you are. Hunger also expands possibility. When you're hungry, you see opportunities where others see obstacles. You find pathways where others see dead ends. You tap into creativity, determination, and courage that you never had access to when you were comfortable. Hunger expands your focus. It sharpens your awareness. It heightens your sense of urgency. It forces you to tap into a deeper level of strength because the alternative, staying where you are, becomes unbearable. Hunger doesn't just push you forward. It pulls you toward a future that feels meaningful, aligned, and alive. And as you move toward that future, you start to shed the layers of doubt and hesitation that once held you back. Your identity shifts from someone who waits to someone who creates, from someone who hopes to someone who executes, from someone who dreams to someone who becomes. Hunger is the silent force behind every breakthrough, every transformation, every reinvention. It is the moment you decide that who you were is no longer enough for who you're becoming. What you feed grows. When you feed your hunger for growth, your destiny expands with it because every thought, every choice, every action is an investment in the future you're creating. Most people never realize this truth. Your life is always growing in the direction of whatever you nurture. If you feed fear, your fear multiplies. If you feed doubt, your doubt deepens. If you feed excuses, your excuses take root and shape your identity. But when you feed hunger, real hunger, the kind that pulls you toward your potential, everything in your life begins to stretch, widen, elevate. You start to operate from a place where possibility becomes normal, where growth feels inevitable, where expansion becomes your natural state. And that shift doesn't happen from one dramatic moment. It happens from feeding that hunger repeatedly, consistently, intentionally, until it becomes who you are. Every day you're either feeding your inner power or starving it. You're either feeding your progress or feeding your limitations. The dangerous thing about life is that it's easy to feed the wrong things without even realizing it. Comfort is seductive. Familiarity is soothing. The path of least resistance is always available. And when you feed comfort, comfort grows. When you feed procrastination, it grows. When you feed the belief that maybe tomorrow is good enough, that belief becomes a pattern, then a habit, then a personality. But hunger requires something different. Hunger requires focus. Hunger requires honesty. Hunger requires discipline. When you feed hunger, you're choosing to invest in the version of yourself that refuses to settle, the version that knows you are meant for more, the version that sees beyond the limitations of your current environment and into the future you're capable of building. Feeding your hunger means giving energy to the things that elevate your life. It means surrounding yourself with people who expand your thinking instead of shrinking your vision. It means choosing challenges that stretch you instead of routines that numb you. It means setting goals that scare you a little because they remind you that you're still alive, still growing, still evolving. Hunger thrives on movement. It thrives on momentum. It thrives on the feeling of becoming someone you've never been. And the more you feed it, the bolder it becomes. Suddenly, you start taking steps you once avoided. You start having conversations you once feared. You start showing up with a certainty that wasn't there before. That's what happens when hunger gets fed. Your identity begins to expand to match the future you're chasing. And over time, something powerful happens. The more you feed your hunger for growth, the more your destiny begins to widen. Opportunities that once seemed invisible start appearing. Pathways that once felt closed begin to open. People who align with the next version of your life start showing up. This isn't magic, it's alignment. When you feed hunger, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, what you attract changes. You begin to think differently, move differently, decide differently. You stop responding to life from a place of scarcity and start responding from a place of possibility. You stop seeing your current circumstances as limitations and start seeing them as launch pads. You stop waiting for your destiny to happen to you and start shaping it with intention. Hunger amplifies everything you touch. When you feed it, you elevate your standards. You stop accepting the excuses you used to tolerate. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop settling for minimal effort. A new urgency takes over. Not the kind that stresses you, but the kind that awakens you. The kind that reminds you that life is happening now, that your future is being shaped by the choices you make today, that every moment is a chance to feed the part of you that's ready to rise. And when you feed that part consistently, your destiny expands beyond anything your old self could have imagined. Your life follows your focus. Your destiny follows your decisions. Your future follows your hunger. Whatever you feed becomes stronger. Feed doubt, and doubt becomes your identity. Feed hunger, and hunger becomes your power. And the more you feed that hunger for growth, not once, not when it's convenient, but daily, the more your life transforms from the inside out. You begin to feel a pull towards something bigger, something more aligned, something that reflects the truth of who you were always meant to be. That pull is your destiny responding to your hunger.